Okay, so it looks like we're live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second Open Farms live Q&A session. We're going to talk today about raising animals, which is pretty exciting. So I'm Alison, and I'm the Community Development Officer with Frontenac County. Also on the call, sort of in the background, is a colleague of mine, Brianna. She's here for technical support, which is fantastic. Today, we're going to talk to 3 farmers about raising animals, and those farmers are Becky from Maple Ridge Farm and Mark from Maple Ridge Farm. You'll see Becky and Mark are on 2 different screens. Mark is also a teacher at Lowborough Public School, and so he's actually in his classroom right now. I think he's helping a student, which is why you can't physically see him on his screen, but he is there. I saw him a minute ago. And then we have Xiaobing, who's from Long Road Eco Farm. So Maple Ridge is in Sydenham and Long Road is in Harrowsmith. 2 very different farms, which I think is going to give us a very cool discussion today. We have about 17 people registered for this webinar, and a number of you have already joined in, which is fantastic. I want to first welcome you to this session, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm really glad that you're here, and I think it'll be a great discussion. I also want to tell you a few things. So through the webinar platform that we're using on Zoom, you can see us, but we can't see you. So that's just one of the features. Your camera is disabled, but you can see us. So we can't see you, but you can still ask questions, and you can do that 2 ways. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little button called Q&A. You can click that button and then type in a question there. I'll see that question on my screen, and then I'll pose it to our panelists, and then they can answer the question. You can also ask a question by raising your hand. So there's a little button that says raise hand. Brianna will see that. She'll acknowledge you, unmute you, and then you can verbally ask your question if you'd rather do it that way. And then Brianna will remute you, and then our panelists will answer your questions. So that's sort of the logistics of how you ask a question. This session is going to last for about an hour. We've had a ton of questions submitted in advance from you guys, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask those questions to Becky and Xiaobing and Mark, and they'll go ahead and answer until we get questions through the session, and then we'll jump over to those as well. And before we jump into those Q&As, I'm going to ask our farmers to introduce themselves, and then we're going to watch a couple of quick videos about their farms to give you a better sense of their operations. So maybe I'll ask Becky first, if you can tell us who you are and what you do at Maple Ridge.
Hi, I'm Becky, and I'm from Maple Ridge, and I'm really excited to be here today and to share with you all about our animals on our farm. And that's it.
Xiaobing, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Alison. Good morning, everyone. And I'm Xiaobing, owner of Long Road Ecological Farm, and a very small diversified farm. And I'm also the creator of Farm Stung Food.
Awesome. We'll get into that a little bit more in the session, Xiaobing. Mark, can you give us an introduction, who you are and what you do?
Hey everybody, I'm Mark McCready. I'm part of Maple Ridge Farm with Becky, and I think her introduction took care of it, and we're happy to answer questions about raising animals and keeping track of bees and taking care of flowers. So we're looking forward to lots of questions.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. So now to give you a better sense of exactly what these guys do on their farm, I'm going to go ahead and play a couple of videos. So just bear with me here while I figure out screen sharing, which I think I can do fairly quickly. Okay, so does everybody see the start of the Long Road Eco Farm video?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and play. Hopefully we've got audio as well.
It's a very small operation, a little bit of everything. Raise animals, grow vegetables, and the most important of all is to produce the ingredients to make the Chinese style dim sum food. I raise like those I can use in my ingredients, like chickens for eggs and pork. I grow a lot of bok choy and different type of Asian greens. And right now got a lot of harvest of the Asian style peppers, eggplants, long beans, and also common vegetables like tomatoes. And this year I started to grow ginger, which is important for farm-some food. Like I try to use as much as I can from what I grow. This is what I knew when I grew up. Basically, my mom was doing this self-sufficient lifestyle. Like for me, it's perfect. My name is Xiaobing Shen, owner of Long Road Ecological Farm.
So good.
I love that video. So Xiaobing, maybe can you take a minute now to explain to us what farm-some food is? Obviously, that's what you were making in the video there.
And the farm-some is a type of Chinese dim sum food. And regarding the dim sum food, it's like a small delicacy, has many different varieties. And for me specifically, it's steam buns and dumplings.
And you, in the video, you talked about using the ingredients on your farm. So is that your whole purpose, is produce the ingredients you need in order to make this farm-some food?
I guess in terms of revenue, yes, it is. But I also offer like a vegetable CSA as well. And I have some extra vegetables and I would sell at the farmer's market.
Okay, wonderful. So let's go ahead and we'll share the Maple Ridge video now. And let me just figure out my screen share again.
Maple Ridge Farm is a farm-to-table business, and here we raise high-quality meats through pastured rotations. And we also raise flowers to brighten your day, an apiary, so we steal honey from bees. The farm itself was settled in 1832, which was a big lure for us when we first purchased the place 10 years ago. A lot of the fields were expired and it was in need of some regeneration. So we rotate our cows daily, sometimes twice a day. We use our chickens to complement the movement of the cows. We started market gardening originally, and we realized that there was a big demand for local grown flowers. So we changed over our beds next to us here into flowers. And then we sell those locally at grocery stores in Glen Burnie, some spots in town, and also at our farm stand. People in this community have been farming since the 1700s, so there's a wealth of knowledge, and every farmer has their own experiences and they bring those experiences to the land that they take care of. That sharing of information is really important, and ensuring that these farms are something that's going to be sustainable for their kids and our kids to continue on in their journeys. We feel very strongly that if our business is going to be successful, we have to have people that believe in the same things that we do and trust that our efforts are going to be genuine to the land that we work on and the products that we buy. My name is Mark McCready, and this is Maple Ridge Farm.
So for Open Farms this year, we have 14 participating farms, and so 14 of these videos. And I love watching them sort of side by side because you get a sense of just how different, these farms are. We saw Xiaobing's video first, and the Maple Ridge farm is obviously quite a bit different, which is pretty cool to think that farming can be, quite different across this small region. Becky and Mark, is there anything that you wanted to add after looking at your video?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I think before we jump into questions, I'd like to do a quick poll, and I think Brianna is going to help me with that. So Brianna, can you pop the poll up onto the screen? Ah, perfect. Okay, so our question is, have you been to a farm before? And you'll see that there are lots of answers here. We know that some of you are participating as a class. So the first 3 answers would apply to your class. So no, none of our students have ever been to a farm. Some of our students have, some have not, or all of our students have been to a farm. And then some of you are participating as individuals. So those sort of final 4 answers would be for you. I have never been to a farm. I've been a couple of times. I've been lots of times, or even I live on a farm. It's one of our respondents, one of our responses. So if you can go ahead, our attendees, and answer that poll. We'll give you a minute to do that, and then we'll just get a quick snapshot of, how familiar everybody is with a farm before we get into our questions. Brianna, can you see how many people have answered?
Yes, we have 6 out of 9 people have answered.
Okay, maybe we'll give you another 10 seconds or so, and then Brianna can close the poll and we'll take a look at the answers.
We're at 8 out of 9, so.
Wonderful. All right, if you want to go ahead and close it there, Brianna, we'll. Aha, here we go. So it looks like some of our students have been to a farm, some have not. That was 4 classes have answered, have supplied that answer. And then 2 have said that all of our students have been to a farm before. So that's quite a lot of folks on the call who have been to a farm. It looks like there's another couple of folks who have been to a farm a couple times and have been to a farm lots of times. So it sounds like a lot of folks on the call are familiar with farming or have visited a farm at least a few times. Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer that. And now I think we'll jump into questions. So we've had lots of questions supplied in advance, which is awesome. I'm going to start with our first one, and then we'll mix that up with taking questions that have been asked through the session as well. So the first question, and we'll ask this one to Xiaobing first. So Xiaobing, what do the animals on your farm eat?
Mainly, like I buy certified organic feed and supplement with depends on what we have in season. And right now, like every morning, I would pick up 1 bucket of apples. And for the feed, I usually, like every time when I feed the pigs, and I mixed with water, and for the chickens, just the dry feed.
And what's the dry feed consist of for the chickens? Is it like a corn or a grain or?
It's a mixed, like it's a, how to say, prepared, mixed different type of grains, minerals. So the chicken have a full range of nutrients.
Okay, very cool. Becky, do you want to jump in? Either you can talk again about chickens and pigs, or you have cows at Maple Ridge too. So maybe what do the cows on your farm eat?
So similar to Xiaobing, our pigs and chickens are supplemented with grain, and then they are also all out on pasture. So they get lots of grass and whatever legumes are growing in the fields, and especially for the chickens, whatever bugs and worms they they can catch when they're out and about. For sure, the cows exclusively eat grass, so they're on a full salad bar diet, and then the pigs also graze, which you may be surprised, but pigs love to graze. And as well as what Xiaobing said about the grains, they eat a mix of corn. Ours eat corn, barley, and oats, and it's all mixed up super fine. So it almost looks like a porridge when it's mixed with water.
Okay, cool. Mark, maybe I'll put this next question to you. Do you have to feed the animals on your farm every day?
Yeah, we do. The chickens and the pigs are supplemented with grain, so they get fed twice a day. The cows get rotated 1 or 2 times a day, so if you call that feeding, then I guess we do that too. The bees are actually the lowest maintenance animal on the farm because they don't need to be fed at all. They enjoy harvesting nectar and pollen from Becky's flowers, and this time of year they're going after goldenrod and Canadian thistle, and maybe some fall asters too. So they're the least maintenance animals that we've got on the farm right now.
Okay, very cool. This is a question specifically, I have two questions specifically about cows. How much grass do cows eat in a day? So Becky, maybe I'll throw that question over to you.
So that actually depends on how thick the grass is, what they're eating. Maybe Mark remembers this, but I think they take 10,000 bites a day. Is that right? So they eat a lot, and they actually swoop with their tongue and put the grass into their mouth. They don't actually chew it then. It goes into their stomach, and then they actually regurgitate it up, and then they chew their cud. So when they're actually eating the grass, they're actually just sort of getting it all into their stomachs as fast as they can, and then they digest, rest, and chew their cud. So how much they eat really depends, again, on what they're eating. So if the grass is thin, then they're eating a lot to bulk up there and feel full. But if they're eating grass that's really dense and full of a lot of different plants, I would say they're eating less of that. So I guess similar to us, sometimes when we eat one thing, you feel fuller faster. So it really depends on what they're eating.
Okay, and so the follow-up question there is, how many stomachs does a cow have?
4. Crazy,
Cool.
eh?
Kind of. It's one stomach with 4 compartments.
4 chambers. That's correct.
So the first two chambers are used when a cow's grazing. So that 25 pounds of grass that it eats in a day are stored, well, probably not at once, probably maybe a third of that or a fourth of that is stored in there. And then once the cow rests, it brings those back up and chews its cud. And I think probably most people are familiar with that. And then the next time it swallows it, it bypasses or travels through the rumen and reticulum into the back half of the stomach, and that's when it's digested into the system. So I think probably most people say they have 4, but it's really one stomach with 4 compartments.
Okay, so following on that, we're going to quickly flip over here and watch a video of cows eating. And this is from Maple Ridge Farm. So let's just take a quick look. Hopefully this all works well. So this is what you're talking about, Becky. They're using their tongues to pull this bridge into their mouth.
That's right. So they actually have really short teeth on the top, and they scoop it out, and then they break it off with their with the 2 top little short teeth that they have on the top. But that's actually a cover crop of brassicas. So that field that those heifers were eating is full of turnips and kale, and what else is in there, Mark?
There's peas, there's canola. Did you say kale? And kale?
Yeah, I said kale.
Yeah, I can see the kale.
So
it's like a whole salad.
So that the cover crop, we plant that, and it actually feeds the soil and builds the soil fertility, so makes the soil healthier. And then we also graze it, so it's a win-win. So the heifers get to eat it, so it's forage for them, and then it's also building our soil, and it tastes delicious.
Wonderful. So we're going to switch gears now. We've got a few questions about chickens, and I'm going to ask this first question to Xiaobing. So Xiaobing, how often do chickens lay eggs?
Depends on the season. Usually and also depends on the type of chickens as well. And earlier, like in the springtime, usually it's a high season, and then gradually goes down. And right now, and for the layer type of chicken, which is designed to lay more eggs, right now is 1 egg every 2 days per chicken.
Okay, and so when you think about the spring being the high season, what would it have been in the springtime?
Usually like 1 per day.
1 per day.
Yeah, 1 per day.
Cool. And so our next question is, how do you know if an egg is okay to eat or if it will hatch into a baby chick? Becky, do you want to take that one?
Sure. If you have some eggs in your fridge and you're not sure if they're fresh or not, you can always do the float test. So if you fill up a big bowl or even a glass measuring cup with water, and you put the egg in. If the egg sinks to the bottom, that means it's fresh and go ahead and eat it. If it floats to the top, that means it's bad and not to eat it. So you can do the float test if you're unsure of how long or how old the eggs are and whether they're good to eat or not. And what was the next question?
So it's how do you tell if if the egg's going to hatch into a baby chick?
Oh, okay. So hens naturally lay eggs as part of their cycle. So unless a rooster is in the herd, which is a male chicken, and he has actually bred the hen, the egg is not fertilized, which means there is no baby chick in there.
Okay, so all of the eggs that we buy at the grocery store, we know for sure, or from one of your farms, we know for sure those are okay to eat and they're not going to turn into baby chicks.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Mark, maybe do you want to take this one? How do you know if a chicken is a male or a female?
Well, you don't. Sometimes, as a chick, they have a test where you have to kind of squeeze them upside down. You check the vent. That's not something that we do. To be honest, we had this discussion this morning. We got some specialty breeds from a friend and hatched those out. And some of the breeds are so different that they have characteristics that at one time we thought were rooster characteristics. So it's generally really difficult when they're growing up before they become adult to tell the difference. There are some things that roosters have though that hens don't. One is spurs. So if you look on the inside of their leg, they'll have a long, kind of looks like a really long fingernail, I guess, sticking out the inside of their leg. So roosters will have those, and you can identify a rooster on that. Sometimes it's combs, so the placement of the comb, and the comb is the kind of the red fleshy part on the top of the chicken's head. So sometimes when the comb's taller or longer or placed a little farther back on the skull, that's indicative of a rooster. But with so many different breeds, sometimes it's pretty tricky to tell the difference. Probably the best way is once they're kind of young adult age, they'll start crowing, and then you know it's a rooster. So that's probably the best way.
Okay, so we've talked, you've both mentioned different breeds of chickens. So just quickly, what kind of chicken do you have at Maple Ridge Farm? And then we'll ask Xiaobing what kind he has at Long Road Eco Farm. Mark, what kind do you have? Or Becky?
We have,
go ahead.
We have a bunch of different types. So our main laying herd or laying flock is Rhode Island. So those are the ones in the video that kind of came out of that mobile coop. So in that group, there's probably 75 or 80 or so. And then we have a specialty layer group that kind of runs around the barn. I don't think they were in the video. And then we also raise broilers, and broilers are meat birds that are raised in the summertime. So we do some of those on the farm, and we pull those in chicken tractors through the pasture. So those ones are a little bit different too. So we have those three different flocks that we run at any one time.
Okay, and Xiaobing, what kind of chickens do you have on your farm?
Pretty much the same. Like for Rhode Island Red, it's the main type of birds which lay eggs, and also some specialty ones. We called it like Easter eggs layers. So yeah.
And how many do you have, Xiaobing?
I have about 10 chickens.
Okay, so interesting again to see the difference in farms, right? Actually, one of the questions that we've got from one of our participants is, why are there so many different kinds of farms? So when we look at your two farms and how different they are, why is that? Why are there so many different kinds of farms out there? I don't know whoever wants to take that question first. If you want to jump in.
Okay, I first then.
Sure.
I think yeah, it depends on the knowledge and also the labor needs, and yeah, pretty much. And right now I run the farm just by myself, and so you don't want to overwork, and you want to do what you can control, basically. Like a farm basically is a business, and you run it like a business, and there's a time elements and labor elements there.
So it needs to be manageable for the resources that
Right.
you have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Becky, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think it also comes back to what the farmers are passionate about. So just like you may only like a red car or a blue sports car, there are there's so many different ways that you can farm, and so many different animals and so many different specialties, that I think it's really comes down to what Xiaobing said. So the land, you can still be a farmer even on a really small plot of land in the city, or you could be a rancher that has thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. So you farm differently based on your land, but also the passion and knowledge of the farmer and their interests as well. And then even further to that is the type of practices. So how the farmer actually wants to farm, there is so many differences in that as well. So I think it's just like any occupation. There are so many different ways that it looks, and very different varieties of farms.
I think
There's also too, I should say, there are farmers that just do one thing, which is their choice, as well as farmers that do lots of things, which we will call a diversified farm. So a diversified farm is when you have probably, we're a diversified farm. So we have animals, we have flowers, we've got honey, eggs. Xiaobing would definitely be a diversified farm as well. Or if you are, let's say, a farm where you just farm chickens, then you wouldn't necessarily be a diversified farm. And it could be the same for crops. Like maybe you're just growing corn, and that's what you do. So there's so many different options.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right that, looking at Open Farms as a whole and the 14 different participants, and I think it really comes back to that passion and the why. Why people are farming really dictates how they farm, and that dictates how different farms are. We're going to get into some questions at the end about why you became a farmer or what you love about it. So that'll sort of explore that topic a little bit more. Mark, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I'd just like to throw in the idea that I think everybody's a farmer at heart. The interesting thing is how we define that term as farmer, and at what point in time do you get to be a farmer versus just a person who's raising some food? And so it's a hard term to really define in terms of how you see yourself. If you have a beautiful garden in the backyard, or if you have a flower bed with a few tomatoes, you could argue that you're raising food and therefore you're a farmer. So I always like to think that we all should embrace our inner farmer and go out and plant a garden, or if you're raising a tomato plant on a balcony in an apartment, you're still farming too. That whole idea of raising food that's good for you, grown in good soil, is really what all of us, that I know in the open farm community, that all of us are trying to do. So that whole idea of just, get a chicken and enjoy the eggs every day, or get a tomato plant or a pepper plant or some lettuce on your front porch, that's all farming in its own way. So I think really we can all embrace that and all become farmers and do a good job raising our own food.
That's a really great point. In our last session, we talked about growing fruits and vegetables, and Kathy, towards the end, said that a goal in the farming community is for every family to have at least one gardener in their family. And I think that, use the term gardener, use the term farmer, it's all the same. And I think that that's a great goal for us to have. I'm just going to loop back around here quickly to chickens, and we're going to watch one more quick video from Maple Ridge that features their chickens. And I think these are probably the Rhode Islands that you both talked about. So, here, let's go ahead and watch that video. They look like they're having a really fun time there. So what's happening in that video? You've just opened up the door and this is like the morning and they're coming out to have their breakfast?
That's right. So those are we call them our ladies, but they live in a RV. So they have a mobile coop. They go into that mobile coop at night, and then in the morning that's what we were showing there. You open up the door and they are so excited to get out. They all trample over each other and fly over each other to get out onto the grass.
Very cool. We've had another question come in from our attendees here, and Xiaobing, I'll ask this one to you. Why are there white and brown eggs? What's the difference?
They are laid by different eggs. Oh yeah, sorry, different chickens, and I think it's determined by their genetics. So different color of eggs.
So is there a difference aside from the color of the shell? Is there any difference in the egg itself?
No. They basically same type of nutritions. Of course, like there's differences between the big egg farm, like an industrial egg farm, and also those free-range chickens. You can see the color of the yolk.
And maybe I'll ask you to expand on that. So if we look at a commercial egg farm, those chickens are mostly inside and eating sort of a very defined food, where it sounds like the chickens on your farms are mostly outside and eating a little bit of grain that you give them, but also lots of room to roam and eat grass and bugs and those kinds of things. Is that where the difference in the nutrients of the eggs would come from? Is their food?
Absolutely, and it's just yeah, the eggs is produced by what the chicken eat, right? And
right.
To get more different type of food, bugs, and so that all convert into the nutrients into the eggs.
Okay. Very cool. So I want to shift gears a little bit now. We could probably do a whole session on chickens, and maybe we should at some point. But people want to know about your farm dogs too. So you both have dogs on your farms. Xiaobing, I'm going to ask you first, and then we'll go to Mark and Becky. So Xiaobing, you have a dog, and I don't think it's probably a typical farm dog, her breed, but can you tell us what kind your dog is, and if she has a role on the farm, what she might do?
It's a 10 years old Rottweiler. And actually, it's a guard dog, but right now she is getting old, so she always stay inside the house during the evening, and during the day I let her out from time to time. And because the dog, like any type of dog, she likes to stay with its owners, like spend the time with me. And but she is very feisty, and when she hear or see the signs of animals, she would go chase after them. So it's very inseparable part of the farm operation here.
So she plays a role in protecting your farm and your animals.
That's right.
Awesome. And Becky or Mark, I don't know who wants to talk about Judy, but she's quite involved in farm life. Can you tell us about your dog?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, Juniper's a work in progress. So she's a border collie Bernese Mountain Dog cross, and she's really excitable. So she has that border collie instinct where she wants to herd everything. Crickets, grass, cows, pigs, chickens, people. So she's learning to be a farm dog, and I suppose we're learning to have a dog that likes to work. Other dogs we've had are always, as Xiaobing said, wanted to be with us, so they just kind of followed us around. But this one's a little bit different, so she's right into everything. So she's a work in progress, I would say.
And she has one speed, which is full tilt, like Mach 20. Like she's always on the run.
And again, differently from Xiaobing, Juniper is quite young, right? She's still a pup, would you say?
Yeah, she's just over a year.
We keep using that excuse for her bad behavior. So I don't know what time she maybe becomes an adult with some bad habits, but we'll keep with the puppy thing for now.
Okay, good. So that is a perfect segue, because next we're going to talk a little bit about baby animals. So the question here that we got from one of our attendees is, what do baby animals look like when they're born, and how are they different from adult animals? Xiaobing, do you want to take that one? I know we've got some video that we're going to show in a minute of some pigs on your farm when they were quite young versus what they look like now. So can you tell us what baby animals look like and how they're different from adult animals?
I think maybe this question, Becky and Mark has is more suitable for
Sure.
because I don't breed animals on this farm.
Okay, Becky, do you have any thoughts there?
So I think just sort of like humans, they are a miniature version. So babies are a miniature version of the adult form. So calves are, I think we can all agree that baby animals are super cute. I would say like the chicks when they're like so little and fluffy and yellow and just adorable, and then they grow up into be, I got to be honest, not as cute as they are when they're a chick, but the calves I think are equally like, I love a cow, so I think a calf is also super cute. So I would say generally all baby animals are adorable, and they really just, other than I would say the pigs, when they are first born, I would say are probably the least cute. They look almost like rats, to be honest. Like they have these long tails and their hair is very tight to their skin, and their little ears are usually pinned back the way that they're born and come out of the birth canal. Their ears are flipped. So it takes a few days for them to become super cute where their ears are perky and they're running around. So I guess I would say chicks are the cutest, and calves, and then pigs. But I think as any baby animal goes, they're adorable.
I like that you've given us that rating scale, which one's the cutest and down.
I don't think that was the question, but that's how I answered it.
Mark, maybe you can follow up. The next question is, what are the gestation periods for animals? So I assume that's going to be different for every animal, but can you give us a sense of sort of cows, pigs, chickens?
Yeah, chickens are 3 weeks, so 21 days with a fertilized egg. Pigs are just under 4 months, so 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days is the general rule. So we run about every 4 months after breeding. And cows, Dexters are about 283 days from their breeding date. Cows typically have just one calf a year. Sows can have maybe 1 or 2 litters a year, depending on just how the dates fall.
Okay. That's great, thank you. So the next couple of questions are how long it takes for a baby animal to grow into a full-grown animal. So maybe before we get into that, I'm going to just play some videos that Xiaobing sent me. And I think that they're kind of funny. I have to admit, Xiaobing, I laughed as I was watching them. You're going to see Xiaobing's challenge in trying to get his pigs to follow him. And then we're also going to see sort of a side-by-side in what they look like then and what they look like now. So just let me pull this up and find my screen share. Okay, here we go.
Do you want to go to your new yard? Do you want to go to your new yard, Piggy? Hmm?
They don't listen very well, do they?
Really like this green grass. Do you want to come to the new yard, Piggy? Piggy? Piggy! Piggy! Piggy, come! Come, Piggy! Come! Where are you going? Come here! Piggy! Piggy! The food is here. Piggy! Piggy! Piggy!
So I have lots of questions already from that video, Xiaobing. So my first question is, you're trying to move them to a different yard, is that right?
Yes.
And why is that?
And there's an area by the garden, and I want the pigs to dig them out to prepare for the new bed.
Okay.
And remove the weed.
Okay. And you obviously have food with you, and they don't care about that at all.
I think, yeah, they are very curious and they want to explore. And that was in the morning. Usually, like they come with the food.
Okay. So when
Yeah.
they've run off into, it looks like a bush there. So is that part of a field that's not where they would normally get to explore?
Yeah, that's a part of the farm, and I guess yeah, they are not the area they are supposed to go.
Okay. So
but they usually follow me. Yes.
okay. So pigs are pretty curious, though. That's something that video shows. That's a trait that most pigs have.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, so we're going to play the final video in the series here to show you that Xiaobing's pigs didn't totally run away and they did actually come back to him.
Okay. You guys stay here, okay? Do a lot of work?
So will they eat all those weeds that were in that yard there that we were looking at, Xiaobing?
They did a pretty good job, and so they dig the roots, and that's what I hope them to do. And yes.
Okay, so now we're going to look at what those pigs look like today. Can you see the picture of the pigs?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so these are those same two pigs. They're obviously much larger. So what's the difference in time here? How long ago were those videos compared to this?
The video was taken in April, and at that time, the pigs was about 10, 12 weeks old, and so that's this picture was taken maybe about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I guess probably like a 250 pound maybe.
Wow. So in about 4 months, they grew from April, May, 4 or 5 months maybe. They grew from what we saw in the video to what we're seeing now in this picture.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So that was one of the questions. The other question about how long it takes animals to grow is around cows. So Becky, can you answer how long does it take for a calf to grow into a full-grown adult cow?
I would say probably about a year. We leave them with their mums for at least 6 to 8 months, and then we wean them. So then they're actually not having any milk at that point. And I would say up until probably the first month or so, they really just have milk, but you'll see them nibbling on grass, and they're watching what the other cows are doing, and they learn to graze. And really at even probably at 4 or 5 months, they're really just using their mom's milk as a supplement, and they're eating the grass and the hay just like their mom. So I would say probably at a year or 2 maybe. We have the breed that we raise, Dexters. They're a slow growing animal, so I would say different breeds mature at different rates as well. So Dexters are slower growing, so it takes them a little longer to be full size. I would probably even say like 2 to 3 years, probably more likely.
Okay. So I want to shift gears again. We got a number of questions about honey and honeybees. So these are probably going to be putting Mark on the spot a little bit. So Mark, the question about honeybees, the first question is, how do bees make honey?
Honey is actually bee barf. A worker bee, which is a female bee, they're the ones that you see out working around. So they get nectar from a flower, and they have a series of enzymes in their gut, and they swallow the nectar, and then it works with the enzymes. So enzymes are like a liquid that your body makes that changes another liquid that you've swallowed. So humans have enzymes that help break down food or help us access minerals from our diet. So a bee has one that changes nectar into honey. And it actually gets passed through a series of workers before it actually is the honey that we consume. So it might go through 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different worker bees before they put it into a cell. And that refines the sugars in it, makes that honey really sweet. So basically when we consume honey, we're consuming bee barf.
You make it sound so tasty.
It is.
So the next question about honey is, how much honey does one bee produce?
A very small amount. It's like a 1/12 of a teaspoon in its lifetime.
Wow.
So in the prime of its season, a worker bee will live about 6 months, and it'll visit thousands and thousands. I think online you might find someone's counted the number to be 12 or 13,000 flowers in its lifetime. But they'll visit all those flowers. So it's a 1/12 of a teaspoon. So it's a very small amount.
Wow. So how many bees are in a hive then?
It just depends on the health of the hive. If you have what you see around typically are hives that have 2 boxes, and in those hives you might have 60 to 80,000 bees. Some beekeepers keep single boxes, and those hives will be a bit smaller. But if a beekeeper's added 3 of those boxes, and those are just basically brood chambers, you could be 100,000. So it just depends on the strength of the colony and their access to food sources and how well the queen is laying and those sorts of factors.
Okay. And one question that I've got a couple of times is, how do you get bees out of the hive, or how do you get honey out of the hive without getting stung?
Yeah, it's a really common question about getting stung, and it really to understand what a hive is like, you kind of have to either be right there, no pun intended, to see it. And bees are really calm. Honeybees are not the ones that are typically bothering you. The ones that are buzzing around your head this time of year are yellow jackets. Those are wasps. So they're trying to find some protein to take back to their own hives for their food sources for the winter. Honeybees are way too busy. So they buzz around the flowers, and we've got 25 hives right around our house, and rarely would you even know that the hives are there. So to answer the question, the honeybees are really calm typically. They're busy working, so as long as I'm calm when I'm working with them, as long as I pull the frames out slowly and I don't squish any bees and I don't drop anything, they rarely even bother with me. So sometimes people want to know like how many times I've been stung. I think this year, and we're kind of getting to the end of the beekeeping season, I got stung once. And then maybe in the last 10 years, maybe 20 times in total, not very often.
And when you work with the bees, you wear a bee suit, right?
I do, yeah. It amazes me that I see people that don't. The part that goes over your head's called a veil, and then I wear a jacket and some gloves. Sometimes I don't wear gloves, just depending on what I'm doing with the hives. But some people don't wear veils or jackets or gloves or anything, and those people amaze me that they can do that. But I don't like getting stung in the face. It's not a pleasant experience, so that's why I wear that equipment.
I can imagine. That makes sense. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We've got about 9 minutes left in this session. It's flown by. I feel like we could have another 4 or 5 of these. But I've got some questions now about the challenges of farming, and I assume getting stung in the face by a bee would be one of them. But the first question here is, how do you take care of animals in the winter when it's cold? Xiaobing, can you talk about some of the challenges that present during the winter time?
In winter, like I don't keep a lot of animals, and like usually for the pigs, and I take to the butcher early winter, like in November, October. And chickens I keep, and I have a greenhouse, and I usually move the chickens into the greenhouse, and the environment is pretty nice for them, warm, bright, and also providing nutrients to the soil there for the next season.
That sounds like a great solution, and a nice cozy climate for your chickens over the winter time. Becky or Mark, are there specific challenges that come up in the winter on your farm?
So I would say mostly the animals aren't as bothered by the cold as they are by the wind. So we make sure that we have lots of space for them to get out of the wind. And then we use lots and lots and lots of deep dry bedding. So we use straw for our bedding, and the pigs will burrow actually right into, they'll almost bury themselves with the straw. And the cows typically just lay on top of the straw. So they all have shelters that they have lots of choice to come in and out of the weather if they choose. And as long as they have a dry spot to lay and a place out of the wind, they really seem very unfazed by winter.
Very cool. Here's a question, and I think you'll answer this differently, which is going to be cool. What do you do when your machinery breaks? So at Maple Ridge, I know you have a few pieces of large equipment, large machinery. Xiaobing, your equipment would probably be more sort of handheld, not so much motorized. What do you do when your equipment breaks? Becky or Mark, do you want to start, and then Xiaobing can...
This is definitely a Mark question.
Throw things would be bad answer. Throw things, out my feet. No. We fix it, dear Liza. It's it's one of the things about farming, and if you listen to country music, it's portrayed really nicely in most songs, is that you just do it. So whether you're teaching yourself how to fix a hay bind, or you're helping a friend with an animal that's not feeling well or is ill, or you're doing that yourself, you just kind of have to roll with it and figure it out, and rely on the community if you need help to ask questions, because there's things that you don't know how to do. And there's certainly always lots of people in our community that are willing to help. And so we rely on family and friends, and you just figure it out and do it. And you try to do it in the most economical way that you can, because equipment's expensive, and when it breaks down, you can't just throw it away and get a new one. You have to find the parts and figure out how to fix it. So that's it isn't one of the most joyous things when your equipment breaks down in the middle of a season that you need it, like a hay bind or a rake or a manure spreader or those things. So it's just one of those things you just do it, put your head down and work.
Xiaobing, do you have any other ideas, or is that the philosophy on your farm too?
Yeah, like I hope I have some skills, but I don't really have much skills on the machinery, so I keep farming simple, only rely on the hand tools, and if it breaks down, and then just to get a new one.
It's an interesting example of what you talked about before, right? It's farming is a business, and you have to make sure that it's manageable. And for you, that means avoiding machinery, because that's not one of your skill sets, and you don't have the resources to fix it. So instead of investing a lot of time or energy there, you've tweaked your approach so that you're using equipment that you can handle, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. So I want to show one more video, and this is not necessarily broken equipment, but it looks like something has broken. And well, Mark and Becky might not have been so happy. It looks like one of the pigs was quite happy. So let me just share my screen. Pigs seem like funny animals. Would you say that? They're funny?
Yeah, they're really so curious, as Xiaobing said, and they had been playing in this broken hose all day. You can see in front the muddy wallow there. So they were having the time of their life.
Now Val's gonna check it out.
So the hose isn't supposed to be like this, right? It's sprung a leak.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's the main line that actually supplies water to the whole farm, basically. So they had chewed a hole in it or stepped on it and punctured it. So they were having a grand old time. There's a lot of pressure on that line.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to get into some questions that I think are really good. So the first one, and I'll ask this to all of you, is how or why did you get into farming? Mark, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, it was just a natural evolution of what we were interested in. We really set out trying to produce food for our family that we believed was good quality, and so we started growing vegetables, and then we had chickens for eggs, and then both Becky's family and my past, we had farms in our background. So we realized that we did have some skills that we could bring into cows and pigs and chickens. So it just kind of evolved very organically, and then I'll let Becky take over from there, because it's really a business that she's developed from there.
I think it suits Mark and our personalities very well. So in addition to us wanting to know where our food came from and that piece of it, we love to be outside. We love projects. We love animals. And we love growing things. Like, I think putting a seed in the ground and seeing the flowers and the joy that they bring people, or even, harvesting honey or those sort of things. I think there is great satisfaction to that. And we also love a challenge. And I would say farming is probably one of the most challenging things when it comes to an occupation that you could pick. So it's that challenge. And I think for both Mark and I, we love to learn. So farming is always evolving and you're always learning. So what worked last year might not work this year. So it's a puzzle. Like, you're constantly figuring it out and taking cues from nature and seeing what's happening in nature and trying to replicate that on your farm. So I would say those are the important things, I would say, that led us to our passion for farming.
And Xiaobing, how is your story different or similar?
I think pretty much quite similar to what Mark mentioned, and like a natural revolution. And I grew up in a peasant family in China, and I thought I wanted to get away from farming and get a higher education, and came abroad and lived in different cities. But eventually, I guess, like the passion, as Becky mentioned, towards farming, and it grew inside me. And I think probably I always know, like in my bones, I wanted to be a farmer, like grow own food and eat healthy.
I've heard your story told a couple of times, Xiaobing, and it seems like there's a real lifestyle piece too. Like, you were living in Toronto, there was a lot of schedule, there was, you were go, go, go all the time. And there was something about this sort of simpler lifestyle that your mom led when you were a kid that was one of the draws, is the need to sort of slow down and get back to the core values in life.
Yeah, exactly. And especially during this pandemic, and living on a farm has never been a normal kind of life. So for me here.
Yeah. Okay, so one more question before we go, and that is, what can we do? So as non-farmers, I guess, or as students or people in the community, what can we do to support farmers and understand the impact of the great work that you do? If you had one thing that you wanted people in the community to do, what would that be? I don't know who wants to start. I would like to hear from everybody. So Becky, do you have any thoughts there?
I would say compost, or plant a garden, or everybody, just as Mark talked about, you don't have to be a farmer to impact our environment or to positively be improving nature. So I would say just do your part at home. I would say, yeah, compost. And if you can, buy local. I think that, and support a local farmer. I think that's a great contribution to your community.
Awesome. Xiaobing, do you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like compost. And also use the compost to grow your own, either in a pot or start a small garden, and to see what kind of work involved to grow vegetables from tiny little seeds to something you can harvest.
That's cool. And Mark, do you have any last thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's I'm really big about soil, and I think the more that we concern ourselves over soil, the better our food chain is going to be. And what I mean by that is, it actually came from a comment from someone in my class yesterday. I asked them where food came from, and one of them answered dirt, and they probably weren't really serious about the answer, but it's actually true that our soil directly relates back to our food directly relates back to the quality of the soil. So if we're all more concerned about what goes into our soil and how we're treating our soil, at the end of the day, our food is going to be better, because our cows eat the grass grows from the soil. And if we don't have good quality soil for that grass to grow from, the cows are going to be missing out on the nutrients that they need to be the best possible cow that they can be and live their best life. So I would really like to see people concern themselves over what we're doing to our land, and making sure that what we're putting on it is good for the land and good for the ecosystems that live around it. And then certainly supporting local is always the best step. So if we can reduce the distance that food has to travel all of the time, and I think that's always a good step to making sure our food system is going to be sustainable, and we're going to be in charge of our own food supply, which are a couple of important things.
Those are really good points. And when you talked a lot about soil there, Mark, and we did a Q&A last week about growing fruits and vegetables, and Kathy and Josh, the farmers that were involved there, talked a lot about healthy soil and how we can tell if soil is healthy and how we can make it healthier. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in getting into that to go back and watch that one. It's not posted yet, but it will be. And on that note, we have 4 more Q&As happening in this session. So check out that Q&A page and register for the next one. I want to thank everybody so much for their time. So Becky, Mark, Xiaobing, thank you for joining us and taking part in this discussion and sharing your expertise and your very funny pig videos. And to the attendees who have been on the call, thank you so much, not only for your participation here, but for submitting those awesome questions. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you'll have some great discussions in your classrooms after this. I also want to thank a couple of sponsors. So the Frontenac Federation of Agriculture has helped sponsor some of these Q&As. So thank you so much to them, and to everybody else in the farming community who is doing their best to improve our environment and provide local, healthy, fresh food for our communities. So thanks everybody, and enjoy your day, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, Alison.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.